If I can have everyone's attention, please. It is a great sign when the room is so loud with conversation, even with all these speakers, you can't hear me. I hope you're enjoying your lunch, and I love the energy in the room. But I'm going to interrupt your great conversations to move forward with the program part of our awards lunch today. So the Raskin Scholarship is an annual award made by ESIP to a current graduate student in the earth or computer sciences who has an interest in community evolution of earth science data systems. The scholarship is named for longtime ESIP participant Robert G. Raskin, a pioneer in earth science semantics, and seeks to promote collaboration, research support, and exposure for talented students in the earth or computer sciences. This year's award winner not only met Rob, but continues his work on the semantic web for earth and environmental terminology, or the suite ontology. Brandon is no stranger to ESIP. He served as an ESIP Community Fellow from 2014 to 2015. And then from 2021 to 2023, he chaired the Semantic Technologies Committee, and he continues to participate in ESIP activities in semantics, soil ontologies, and the suite ontology. He is currently pursuing a PhD at the Engineering School of Sustainable Infrastructure and Environment at the University of Florida. So it is my pleasure to introduce Brandon and give him an opportunity to tell you more about his work. We will have time for question and answer at the end. So if you want to grab that Slido QR code so that you can put your questions in there while he's speaking, we'll have it also up at the end. Thanks.
Thanks. Hey everyone, can you hear me? Wonderful. I probably don't need the microphone, but we'll give it a go. Yeah. So first of all, thank you. Thanks to Susan and the committee for choosing me. This is a wonderful honor. I wanted to quickly thank some of the people that I've worked with. Right, we don't work in a vacuum usually. There's been many fruitful conversations over the years, not least of which being from what used to be the Semantic Web Cluster, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now the Semantic Technologies Committee, and the fantastic group that makes up the Semantic Harmonization Cluster. They're sort of a working group, and they do fantastic work if you're interested. The Soil Ontology and Informatics Cluster as well, quite new. And I already mentioned the Raskin Scholarship Committee, and also the family of Robert Raskin for making the opportunity possible. I want to take a few minutes just to have a quick story about Rob Raskin. So when I was getting ready to graduate, I applied for a job at NASA, and Rob was the one who interviewed me. Okay, so he gives me a call. We schedule a slot. It's like a 30-minute slot or something like that. He gives me a call, and we're having a chat, and we kind of go off on these tangents all over the place, which if any of you have ever talked to me, that's pretty normal. But we ended up talking it was closer to about 90 minutes. I mean, getting to the point where I was wondering if my cell phone was going to die. You know, nobody wants to be the one that hangs up on the person that's interviewing you. So anyway, so we have a chat. I thought it was going well. We end. A couple weeks later, Rob gives me a call, and he says, "Brandon, I just wanted to call you and let you know you're going to get a letter in the mail, and it's going to say that you weren't offered the position. But what I want you to know is that nobody's going to be offered the position because the funding didn't go through." Then he proceeds to tell me that, don't let this dissuade you from working on the things that you're interested in. And then he told me that he told me some other stuff, but then he told me he's going to be at AGU in the winter in San Francisco, and if I was there, to come find him. Okay, so fast forward to AGU. I ended up going to AGU that year, so that was my first one. So Rob was giving a talk, so I went and listened, and he didn't know what I looked like, so I kind of waited afterwards to have a chat with him. And he kind of grabbed me by the arm, and he's like, "You need to come with me. The AGU informatics session is having a they're having a social function at AGU, and you need to meet some of these people. So come, he's like, just wait until I'm done here, and then I'll take you down there. So I wait. He takes me down there, and we get down there, and everybody's talking. It's the first for me with a background in earth science and GIS. Hearing people say things that using words like cyber infrastructure, right? Which was new to me as a domain scientist. So cyber infrastructure, spatial data infrastructure, ontologies, data interoperability, and in speaking with him, and he introduced me to Peter Fox. So we were having this chat with. There's a few sort of grad student type people, and those two, and trying to make sense at the time of what they were talking about, but it really resonated, right? It was a lot of things that I was dealing with in terms of data harmonization at the time, like just trying to get two data sets from two different people to work together. Anyway, but Peter and Rob then told the students they had mentioned, look, the AGU is great if you're looking for like a report out, right? If you're looking for what people have been working on, but if you want to be involved with people that are like doing things on the bleeding edge, you should check out ESIP. And so I did. And here we are. That was some number of years ago. So now I want to just take a minute because I mentioned I'm going to talk about this as part of my research. And I mentioned earlier, one of those first conversations was talking about data semantics and ontologies. And so I just wanted to touch on ontology, the term ontology, because it's one of those things that gets conflated and sort of bastardized a bit. So when I'm talking about ontologies, or when I talk about concepts, talking like a concept being the thing in your mind, and an ontology is just a set of statements that describe that thing, right? Hopefully we can use following the subject predicate object model, and there'll be more than one statement. Usually you probably will have a couple million. But the beauty, at least for me, especially when I was starting out, was the idea that it's codified. It's based on a formal logic, which means we can make it computational. Okay, so that to me, especially when I was first starting out and learning about kind of what these things were, was like the possibilities were endless. Right? We can capture our mental models, our conceptual models. And if any of you have ever worked on or looked at any ontologies, that's just not true. But we'll get there. I mean, we will get there, right? So I always pause for a minute when I say that, because I want to see if anybody is coming back from the future to try and stop me. And that looks like I'm gonna have to change my course again. All right. So anyway, so just a quick bit about ontologies. And the last thing is the statements about being URIs. So they should be dereferenceable. Okay. Meaning that it's a web address. If you click on it, it should go somewhere, not to a error page. It should go to like an entity page, hopefully. Now, the reason that I mentioned that, because I'll be talking about ontologies a bit more, but in those initial conversations, Rob was explaining what I found out later, he was explaining SWEET, okay, the semantic web for earth and environmental terminology, which at the time he'd been developing for like 10 years. All right. I think largely on his own, if I remember right. But anyway, so I later on became interested in this ontology. Okay, so it was after he passed, and another person at NASA decided that this resource should no longer be housed at NASA. It should be openly available. So his name's Louis McGibney, and he was one of the drivers behind getting it out, putting a license on him, and putting it on GitHub, making it openly available so that the community could make use of it, instead of just perhaps a handful of people. And it's one of the things that I have a weird fascination with, making that useful. Okay, or trying to make that useful. I don't know if it's because of the connection, but I'm just fascinated by it. All right. So that all happened a while ago. We fast forward to one of the more recent ESIP sessions. This was in the summer of, I believe it was the summer of 2021. I get involved in the session. It's a breakout session, I think. And we start chatting about soils data. Okay. So I'm chatting with a group of, I think, four of us, and we were talking about soils data and different types of soil and what are the problems. And I'm thinking I've had this conversation before. I don't remember where, but I've had this conversation before. So we're talking about a tremendous amount of soil data being available, but they're not really connected, right? There's not always excellent metadata. There's usually metadata, but it's not always fantastic. If you're a soil scientist, you can probably figure it out. But if you're not, good luck. So that's the bigger circles are the sort of properly funded larger databases. And then you have all the independent researcher data that may be on your laptop, or maybe you put it on Dryad or whatever. So you have this sort of constellation of data's ecosystem of data that may be missing the services portion, but it's there, right? We want to make use of it. What kind of questions could we ask if we were able to link the data together or use it as one knowledge base or data set versus 100? So then we start talking about questions like, what can we do? What could I do if I could link these together, right? If I could synthesize, if I were able to make comparisons, right? If I were able to enhance not only my understanding, but others. We also were talking about the challenges, which was a lot longer than this, but they're distributed. Most of them, or I shouldn't say most, whether or not they have an API access is questionable. We have different formats often. And then there's the naming conventions, right? And also, as with most earth sciences, the methodology is often important, but it's not always captured, or it'll be captured like in a genetic naming convention or something, which again, if you're in the domain, you've probably learned how to see that. But if you're not, or if you're slightly tangential, that becomes problematic. We got into questions, right? Like, what can we do with this? What can we do with this if we put some effort into it? Like finding certain parameters across all data sets, and then parameters of parameters, right? Are these equal? They're described the same way, but are they actually, can I use them together? What actually was the methodology? And do those methodologies line up? And then there's the typical spatiotemporal questions that we often ask, because we're not interested in global data. We may be, but not, sometimes we're interested in a region or a certain time period. So this is after the conference now, and this conversation continues with a smaller group of, it's actually a slightly larger group of people. And we focused on, we were trying to figure out if this is tractable, okay? So we took one example. We were looking at soil bulk density. There was I think a handful of properties we were talking about, and soil bulk density was the one, or bulk density was the one that kept coming up as being really important for, to be able to, as an indicator for nutrients, how much water is in the soil. It is an indicator for several things, quite important, foundational, perhaps. So I started digging around. I'm looking at, this is WOSIS, which is the World Soil Information System, which is housed by ISRIC in the Netherlands, I believe. And so I'm just wondering what they have, what kind of bulk density data they have across some of their data stores. So this is just an example from WOSIS. We have a coded value, we have a property unit, fantastic, they have a unit, and then a description. And I thought, okay, so bulk density, fine earth, the top line, bulk density is fine earth, 33 kilopascals. All right, so it's kind of jammed together. That's fine, though. That's good information. But you'll see that if you read through them all, I don't know if you can actually read the slide, but if you read through them all, they repeat, right? So the first four are fine earth, and the last four are the same, but it's whole soil. Okay. All right. So if I wanted to try and split that out into a draft, right? This is just me trying to work through a conceptual model. Like, how am I going to split this out? So I just took what was on the table and split it out into, don't worry about the predicates, it's just me messing around. But like, I want to account for the fine earth. I want to account for the different methodologies. I want to preserve the definition so I can go back if I made a mistake, and so that other people know what it is if anybody else bothers to look at this ever. Now, right now, this is just me on my own machine, right? I'm not actually working with anyone else yet. But the fine earth and whole soil bit, I focused on. Okay, so we need to account for the part of. We need to account for the fact that there's one or the other. And then what is fine earth? Does it mean the same thing to everyone? So looking at the definitions across some of the databases, it seems to be pretty consistent that less than 2 millimeters is actually what we mean when we say fine earth. Okay, cool. That's promising. So if I wanted to try and think about just capturing bulk density, either as a concept on its own or as a property, and then I want to make sure I have some units just to tether it to something. And then I want to keep track of the methodologies because that can be important. It's not always important. It can be important. Depending on what question you are asking, you might just be interested in the bulk density, but there are instances where you need to know what the methodology was in order to make sure your results mean what you think they mean. So apologies, I'm not sure you'll be able to read this, but I've just laid this out a little bit bigger because I was a concept map. I'm trying to organize the space and figure out how things fit together. So if I were interested in linking this concept of bulk density and the properties together with one of the lines, I just took the top line again. So we have the fine earth the top line is the fine earth at an intersection with equilibrated, right? That's kind of what it means, okay? And you want to do that for all of them. So we want to be able to preserve the relationships and hopefully find patterns, right? If we ever want to use this for more than one purpose. If it's a model, we might be able to use the terms for search or metadata or whatever. Okay, so that's one. That's just WOSIS. So what about, this is SODA, which stands for Soil Data Harmonization. So it's another group that I believe it's 3 databases that they looked at harmonizing together. Okay, so they did some of the legwork already. Fantastic. So I had to look at what's in their repository, which is on EDI. And excellent. So the metadata was there. I had a pretty good idea of what I was looking at. All the description, all the fields were filled in. And it turns out that their description, even though their column names, their property names were different, their descriptions were the same. So in this figure is the same, except for there's a light blue or aqua colored categories, and that's the SODA category. We're showing that they're equivalent. So that's equivalent fine earth and equivalent whole soil, at least for these purposes, as far as I understood it also. So as far as I understand it, not as a soil scientist. So I moved on. I thought, well, this is interesting. Let's have a look at another database. This is ISRAD, International Soil Radiocarbon Database. Same thing. Looking through their metadata, they have, of course, some coded column names, but the definitions are the same. The units are different, but they're actually equivalent. So when you go through and dig through, read the definitions, all we've added to this figure is the purple row, okay? Which means that we've got some, and that purple row it's not obvious until you read through all the metadata tabs, but it's equivalent to one of the rows in WOSIS, okay? Excellent. We've harmonized something, at least in theory, right? So now fast forward to about a year later. So this previously was just discussions with a small group. And what I didn't realize when I started talking about this was I was actually talking with my future PhD supervisor about the project that I will probably be working on. So now I am at the University of Florida. I'm working for Kathy, who's in the front. You should have a chat to her if you like. She's awesome. And we met for the first time here in Asheville because I live in New Zealand. So everything we do is via Zoom. So, and you probably, if you've ever seen me, it's probably with a frame, or you've seen that picture that was up on the first slide, because I like to hide. So in closing, I just wanted to share with you that, so ESIP for me has been quite important. And I didn't know at the time when I was having the conversations with Peter and Robin and whomever at AGU, and when I was at ESIP, I didn't realize how important those conversations would be later on. I didn't realize the effect it would have on me, and I still don't know the effect that any of the conversations the effect that I might have had on others with the conversations that we've had. So as you're wandering around and chatting to people, and it's Wednesday already. Is it Wednesday or Thursday? It's Thursday already. I'm used to being a day ahead. Just think about that, right? Especially if you're not sure, go for it. And this came up the other night, so I thought I'd share it. I think it fits. It fits the thrust of the conference. We were chatting at the bar like you do, and this came up. Yeah, enjoy yourself. It's later than you think. Thank you.
So I'm going to give you all a few moments to put some questions into Slido. We have a few moments for questions for Brandon. Wonderful remarks. Nailed it. I'll lead off the questions because as I look and you tell the story of your progression in your time through ESIP, I think that you have had a nonlinear career path, right? As have I. And I was wondering if you could give some advice to the audience on both sides, right? You have been in ESIP in the very early career, right? And through the stories of your conversations with Rob and Peter, right, you've benefited from great mentors. So what advice would you give to the early career folks in the room about how to take advantage of those opportunities, how to make the most of those connections? And I think you did a little bit already. And then conversely, what advice do you have for the more experienced folks in the room on how they can open doors for people in the way that maybe they have been for you?
Yeah, I sort of alluded to it, I think, but the bit that I guess I didn't make explicit, especially when you're sort of at the, I guess, grad student, or if you're new, whatever stage you're in, if you're new to ESIP, I think one of the reasons why there are people here and people that like consistently come back is there are always, it's sort of an open forum, right? There's not a lot of like guarded, everybody's kind of interested or has similar problems or the same problem, or there's some tech they're interested in or whatever. But you can always find someone who is perhaps a bit more well-established. And for some reason at ESIP, there's a propensity to sort of take you under your wing or show you what they're working on, right? It's just like, here, come here and sit down and look at my laptop. Let me show you this, right? Which I think is amazing. And that's something that I really, I don't know why, but it's here. Okay. If it's called, I don't know if it's called, I don't know what it is. If it was the culture that was set up in the beginning or what, but that's what resonates. And then the flip side, I think it's just continue doing that.
I mean, and I can say that in the EDIJ, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Justice session just before lunch, we talked about, how do we need more formal mentoring programs, right? And how do we continue that culture of mentorship formally or informally in the community? So if that's something that interests you, if it's something that excites you, we want to hear more about that because I think it has, at least for me, I've been in the community 4 years. It's something that is organically within the community, but as the community grows and changes, we want to make sure that we keep that, right? I was stopped in the hallway yesterday and, a participant wanted to speak about Jeff DLB and the impact he's had on this community, right? And we have had amazing leaders in this community. We've lost amazing leaders in the community, but all of those people, Rob, Peter, Jeff, right? They have made impacts on people in this room. And now it's our job to pay it forward, right? So looking at the questions coming in, I knew you guys wouldn't let me down. Let's see. The stories must be captured and conveyed when describing the benefits of the community. I agree, Dave. What effect will large language models have on the need for and development of ontologies? Is the mind map you seek already there?
Oh man. So I'm really interested in basically, I think of LLMs are they're able to produce grammatically correct nonsense, right? I mean, sometimes it makes sense, but it's always going to be an answer to your question. And so for me, that the first question, right now I'm thinking of ontologies or structured information like that as the brain, right? If we can put a brain behind the babble, like we might be onto something. on the flip side, I can see how they might be ruled obsolete, right? If you're talking about statistical learning and it's based on data and journal articles and data packages, maybe there's a way to get around that, or just to automate pulling out the rules or the relationships that are of interest in a specific context. I don't know, but I like the first one. Is the mind map that you seek already there? No, I don't know. Maybe it's possible. I don't know.
We still have work to do, right? So I'll go with that first one. What guardrails are in place in ontologies for false harmonization? Someone thinks things are the same, but it turns out they are not.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. So I mentioned the semantic harmonization cluster earlier, and we did a big package of work based on Ruth Duer's work with the cryosphere. And that was one of the things that we found is the automated tooling is like tools like Robot and the other tools in ODK, the Ontology Development Kit, which at the moment are escaping me, but they're fantastic. If you can pin it to a domain, as soon as you get anything that's interdisciplinary, you're relying on text, right? It's largely text matching. They don't take into account structure. So the false harmonization is an issue. So the point is the false harmonization is an issue, and it's not. I haven't seen any tooling, even with LLMs, that can provide a confidence level that I would be comfortable with, at least running like in a pipeline, right, where there's not a system of checks or a human looking at it. So in terms of the guardrails that are in place, I don't think there are any guardrails. I think it's still sort of, I don't know if it's common sense or, QA/QC, or I'm not sure how to characterize that, but that was part of the point, was that you still need humans to disentangle some of these concepts.
Looking at these questions, I agree with the comment about your skill in talking about ontologies and semantics to non-specialists, right? And I put myself in that category of non-specialists. I will tell whoever asked this question, Brandon has a session, is it tomorrow or later today?
Yep.
He has a session coming up.
Tomorrow morning.
Where I think you will go deeper into these topics if I'm given more time. But any tips for real beginner resources off the top of your head?
Oh, I don't know what real means, but like how real are we talking? I would start
Isn't
with
that from the Velveteen Rabbit? What is real, right?
Oh, that's yeah. I don't, so I would start with there's loads of stuff, but the book that comes to mind, it's the Semantic Web. Oh, dang it. That's the one, The Working Ontologist. Thank you. The Working Ontologist. I always found that one useful. It's Dean Elming and Jim Hendler, I believe. I forget what version they're on anyway, but that one I thought was helpful and useful. They have useful examples and talk about expressivity and what the different types of models and what they're used for. So there are probably better ones, but that's the first one I jumped to mind.
And then I'm gonna ask one last question, and then we'll get you off the hot seat. Just because I love how this question starts. What is your dream? Right? Like I love when a question starts with what is your dream? What is your dream for where you want your research to go and how it might influence government processes for creating relationships?
Oh man, that feels like a trap. I mean, yeah, my dream, I want to change like I want a Terminator to come in and stop me because I'm changing you know what I mean? No, I'm still at the I want to change the world stage, I think we could change how, I don't know, carbon credits are accounted for, change the value, change the accuracy of models. It's limitless, right? Whatever you want to focus on. So in terms of the second part, how do you influence government processes for creating relationships? I think, that's the hope, is that you do something that's good enough that it affects policy, right? It's sound and solid research, and the NRCS and CRS. I'm terrible with acronyms, but yeah, then they think, oh, we need to implement that. We need to incorporate what you built or what you were working on in some way. Yeah, it was kind of lame at the end, but that's where I'm at.
Brandon, I would say, please don't ever get out of the I want to change the world phase, right? Like we need you in that phase. And to all of you in the room, like, can we strive to be in that phase where we want and we believe that we can change the world? So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Make luggage heavier. I was saying I'm making his luggage heavier by sending him back to New Zealand with a heavy plaque. But I get the question all the time about kind of what's the international vision for ESIP. And it's a tough question, right? But I love when Brandon can give a story about how he came to an ESIP meeting and he met people. He came to a virtual meeting and he met people and he met his advisor and, only met her here in person, this week. And we are committed to maintain the virtual participation for the folks that are online today. And so because we know that travel can be a barrier, right? And while we can't always fly all the places we want to be the ESIP brand ambassadors, we are continually looking for ways to open those doors to make ESIP accessible for everyone who wants to come in whatever way we can. So next up is a rather chaotic part of our week, and it is called our unconference. So starting promptly at 2:00, and my apologies to those of you online, the unconference session is so chaotic. This is not part of our virtual program. But so we're going to give you a couple minutes to finish up your lunch table conversations. At 2:00 promptly, I need everyone who has proposed an unconference session to come up here, right? Form a line. This is the part of our program where new ideas that have emerged throughout the week can be given space and given time. So each person who has proposed an idea will get the opportunity to make a 1-minute pitch. It will be timed by Denise. We will stop you, right? About this is my idea and this is why I want you to come and join me for our session, right? And those sessions will start right afterwards, right? And you vote with your feet. And you can go to one, and if the conversation isn't going in the direction you want, you go to another. The hard part about the unconference is finding where the groups are. So we have a Google Sheet. So if you are an idea proposer, I need to know if you need AV, right? If you're going to need to put slides up or put up a demo or you want people to look at a screen, we're going to try and get you in one of our 5 breakout rooms. There's only 5 of them, right? If you are just doing discussions, we will try and put you in a corner of this room, perhaps out on the patio. We will update that Google Sheet, which is linked in Sched, with the location so that the rest of you hopefully can find the people that you are looking for to have those conversations. So that will happen immediately following this. At 2:00, I'll try and get your attention and we'll listen to those pitches and figure out what we're doing this afternoon. While I have your attention, I just want to give one more reminder about tonight's activity. So tonight's reception, sponsored by Riverside, will be at the New Belgium Brewery here in Asheville, and it is open to everyone. We want everyone to come and network and have a good time and meet new faces, meet new people. It is also the place where if you have an idea for a Funding Friday pitch, which happens tomorrow morning, this is where you can meet and be guided and mentored on building that idea and creating a very low-tech poster with markers that explains your idea that you will pitch tomorrow morning kind of during the breakfast time period, right? The rules for who is eligible for Funding Friday are linked in Sched. If you have questions, you can ask staff, but the rules pretty much explain everything. And what's really magical about the poster making reception is that there's a portion of people who are working on an idea, and then there's a large portion of people who are milling around and asking questions and giving suggestions or saying, hey, have you talked to this person, and building that idea, and making it even stronger. And then there's people that are just networking and drinking a beer and having a good time. So I'm sure that you all fit in one of those 3 groups, and we'd love to have you there. As I looked out, I also remember there is a book signing tonight that Dave Jones is doing, Megalodons and mermaids downtown. So if New Belgium Brewery is not for you, see Dave, and I'm sure he can give you the details on that event as well. So there's lots of good things happening this evening to continue the fun and the networking. So with that, I give us exactly 8 minutes to wrap up enjoy your cheesecake or your vegan dessert, wrap up your conversations. Those of you with a pitch, I want you up here at 2:00 sharp, please.